Oh, that's funny.
All right. Let's start. I want to hear who you are and what you do.
All right. My name is Timothy Simmons, Senior, affectionately known as Pastor Tim, and pastor the wonderful church, Progressive on the southeast side. I've been pastor just a little over a year now.
Nice.
And I do that full time.
That's awesome. Very good.
Well, I'm Jalen Chestnut, and I'm an associate minister at The Rock. I love doing the work of the Lord.
How long have you been there at The Rock?
The Rock, let's see, I've been at The Rock for 6 years now. 6 years. 6 years now, and I remember that because me and my wife came at the same time. It's like a year difference. So we're about
I
to
take it
come
she
up on
wasn't
fire.
your wife at the time.
No, we were just
That's
friends.
where you
He was
met.
fishing.
Oh,
He was
good. So The Rock holds a special place in your heart.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
That is good.
Yeah, we both came to the church together, and I'm one of the associate ministers there. Love being a part. I really help with evangelism. I love being out on the streets preaching the gospel. I'm also a student at the University of Evansville, so.
You love to preach the gospel there, but
Yeah.
we'll go there a little later.
You heard about that?
Oh, I heard about that, Jalen. Anyway, tell me your story.
Pastor Lavon Dozier, founder and senior leader of the Rock Global Outreach Ministries with a campus in Evansville, Indiana, and working on a new campus in the Covington, Kentucky, Cincinnati Metroplex area. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation.
Man, you guys, I've loved you guys for a while. We've known each other to different degrees.
Right.
For a while, worked together for the same goal, really, in the city. Right. And that's been the encouraging part. Can you just maybe share with us what caused you to start, The Rock? I know your heartbeat for the Lord and for racial reconciliation.
Correct.
That was our early conversations when we first we started meeting because of prayer.
Right.
Which is a great place to start.
That's where I first met you two.
Yeah, they're praying together.
Right.
And so then it began, hey, let's learn each other's heartbeats. And racial reconciliation, where did that come from?
Well, my earliest experience with racism that I could interpret was racism was between the ages of 8 and 10. Okay, raised in Clarksville, Tennessee, but we would come here because all of our family's from here and stay the summer with my grandmother. And so as one summer, me and a couple friends were riding our bikes on the east side of Evansville, specifically down Pollock Avenue near where the levee is. Mm-hmm. And there were some guys that, I didn't know what they were called then, but they fit the description of like skinheads. And so, they start hurling out, these racial slurs and start chasing us. So we're on our bikes and we're getting it. They drive, riding our bikes back to my grandmother's house. And that was the earliest memory that I had.
So you didn't understand racism, there's a divide that well until...
you hear your parents or talk about certain things, but you're too young to really understand what that is, and even how to process what that is. Okay. I knew that it was bad. I knew that it was hurtful. I was more afraid than anything because I'm thinking these guys are going to try to kill us. Mm-hmm. But what really awakened within me the passion for racial reconciliation was, back home in Clarksville. We moved from downtown Clarksville to a suburb called Cunningham, Tennessee. Okay. And the high school I graduated from, Montgomery Central High School, the girl that was considered my high school sweetheart, my wife don't like hearing me say that.
We'll cut that one for her.
Yeah. My wife is actually Tim's sister, and Tim is married to my sister, so but he knows how that is. So, we were dating. She was a Caucasian girl, and we dated all through high school, right? And, we had those pressures from that, not really so much our peers, teachers, and her mother was a teacher within the school system. And so
you would say it was a greater percentage of that older generation was putting a lot of pressure on you than your peers.
Than our peers, yeah. There were some that had a problem with it, but going through that, and I wasn't a Christian at the time. Okay. She was. Okay. She went to a Methodist church. Okay. I, didn't really, we were the family, I say it all the time, we were the heathen family. We were the family that came on Easter and Christmas. All right. So, she was at youth group every Wednesday night, at church every Sunday.
Okay.
So, a Christian family. Now, we come from a Christian background, but we were not practicing Christians at the time. And so I remember just going through the pressures. We kind of try to hide our relationship from our parents because they didn't want us together, which I couldn't understand from my limited understanding of Christians. Why would this be wrong? So fast forward, my senior year, I get saved. I give my heart to Jesus. We're still dating. And I remember her parents actually, they met me. They thought I was a nice guy, but they didn't want us to be together because I'm black, she's white.
Really?
Her grandfather was a mayor of a small Kentucky city near the border of Clarksville, and he threatened to disown her if she was,
Really?
Yeah. And so, all these different things, these experiences was igniting something in me. It wasn't more of it wasn't anger at that time with that. It was more so a righteous indignation. And so when I got saved, all right, I wrote her parents a letter and just outlining, I don't understand how you can be Christian and, not accept me for something I can't control. I didn't, this is who God made me. I can't control that. Okay. So how can you not, accept me? And I asked this question. I know this was inspired because I knew nothing. Okay, if you told me to turn to Genesis at that time, man, I would probably been, in Nahum or something. Couldn't find it. And I wrote a letter, and I said, if God, when we stand before the judgment, if God says, white people stand over here, black people stand over here, and Christians stand over here, where would you stand? And there was a lot more that I said in the letter, but just sharing my heart. She said when she gave her parents that letter, their tears streaming. So they actually sought counsel from their pastor. Now, here's the thing.
Oh, no.
Okay? They went to a Methodist church. They sought counsel from their pastor because they're like, okay, this kid is nice, but he's black. Here's his counsel to them. If you can't stop them from being together, encourage them not to have children.
Wow.
Okay. And so here I am, an 18-year-old guy.
That's a spiritual leader that's saying that.
Spiritual leader. And I'm like, what? And so, and then that same year we had rezoning. And so they were bringing inner city kids out there into the suburbs. They did not want that. And we almost had like a race war that year. But I was one of the people that got along with everybody, right?
Yep.
So the faculty would have what they call student leaders that would speak to the student body to try to bring some type of reconciliation, peace, and I was one of those. Okay. So all of those experiences led to me knowing, okay,
that's awesome.
Giving me a deeper passion for racial reconciliation.
That's great. I love how you've seen those pieces as this is my role in the body of Christ. That's awesome. What are y'all's experiences with racism now and in the past? I'm curious.
Well, it started with me. I was probably about, I'd say 10 years old. I grew up on the south side of Evansville. And my father was a pastor, of course. And we moved to Newburgh. So that was something. And you can imagine that in the early 90s. Okay. My dad was young. He was in his 40s, I believe. So we moved to Newburgh. I had no clue. Innocent. Had no clue. I just remember we're going to Newburgh's nice house. I'm like, wow, we made it. Yeah. But this was before I had to go to school. So I went to school, and mind you, coming from here, going to there, I was literally the only black boy in the class. So I'm innocent, not really knowing, because I've never experienced anything up until I got to school. So when I got to school, people began to look at me different.
So real quick, how racially diverse was your previous school? Was it mostly black?
Yeah, it was.
Was it a good mix, 50-50? Was it?
He wanted to kind of not shelter us, but he wanted to protect us.
Of course.
So I went to ECS. I went to Evansville Christian School. And back then, that school was awesome. It was mixed, had black people. It was a nice balance, even back then, being a Christian school. So, but moving from there to Newburgh, I was literally the only black boy in the class. So it was sort of like a shock. Then, they didn't accept me.
How old were you?
I was probably about 9 or 10 years old.
So a 9-year-old being the only person of one particular race in a class.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
It was weird. I didn't know. And I've always been an outgoing, person. I've always been a people person.
So your insecurities are coming out.
Yeah.
That weren't even there.
Right. So I'm like, I don't know. So everybody's looking at me like something's wrong with me. But I remember it was this one white little boy and a Chinese boy, Chong and Calvin. Never forget them. They were my best friends. They embraced me, but hanging around with them, I met others besides school, and that's when I began to run into problems. That's when I began to, get called the word, the N word, and that's what really shocked me. And I was like, what is this? What's going on now?
Right.
And it was just like I told my dad and different things, and he had to explain some things to me because we never had the conversation. Never had the conversation. I don't know why. I guess it's something we never had to worry about. But when I moved there, our lives were horrible in Newburgh.
How long did you stay there?
We stayed there until '94. It was so bad, my dad had to move us back to Evansville. He built a house in Evansville so we could get away from there. It was horrible for me, my sister, my brother. Right. It was like I would cry out to come back to Evansville.
Can you tell me that's crazy. I need to hear this. I need to hear that. Tell me the differences now and then that you see. I mean, you're not a 9-year-old boy, and so to a 9-year-old boy, that's more traumatic.
Yeah.
So now you can take a little bit more, understand a little bit more. But what are we getting better? Are we not?
In some cases, I can see it's better, but a lot of stuff was still covered up because a lot of situations bring racism out of people.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
It's okay until it's not okay. It's okay. Okay, I'm a black boy, but I'm playing on the basketball team, and you get more playing time than my son.
Oh, really?
We got issues. I got to talk to the coach because you know who I am. I'm the business owner. My son may not be good, but I'm not about to let this black boy get more playing time. I don't care how good he's. You know who I am, and you know the power that I have. So
I coach soccer, and I have. You might be watching, but my son was the second best kid on the team. There was one kid that's better, and he's a black kid. I wanted him playing all the time. No racism there. And actually, I'm hoping to be with Tay and hear his opinions on some things as well. But man, that's.
But even then, I found I love sports. I played basketball. My dad kept me, and that was one of the reasons why they wanted me on the team to help the team. Mm-hmm. But it was problems.
As long as it wasn't at the expense of their kid.
Exactly. It was a problem when I was getting more playing time. You run into stuff like that. So certain atmospheres, certain situations make it pop its head up.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What are your experiences? You're a little younger. You've got.
I can take it.
I just called you old.
That's all right.
He just passed me the baton, even as he expressed his dealings and how it's popping up. I remember when I was younger, the one incident I remember, I was in first grade, was playing on the playground, and it was a white girl. We were all playing together, and all of a sudden she started to be like to tell me no, I couldn't play with her. And then I finally asked, well, why? And she was like, because you're black. And so, I just remember that statement. Out of all the details, I just remember that statement. And so, growing up, I was always.
It just seems like such a first grader to them. It's an innocent statement and an evil statement at the exact same time.
Right. Yeah.
That's just fascinating to me because to say it so matter of factly.
Yeah, in first grade. So this is probably 2000, 2001. And so, I graduated in 2012 from Harrison. And so, growing up, my family always taught me, hey, you're black. People, they don't like you. You know, they don't want to see you succeed. I always learned from my grandparents, my parents, get your education, do your best. You got to be the best because they don't want to see you succeed. Like, they may smile in your face, they may pat you on the back, but they will stab you in the back in 2 seconds.
In all honesty, what percentage of people do you think are like that? And you can be as blunt as you want.
So what I was saying,
It's one person's opinion, so we don't judge. We're just,
Right.
I really am curious.
Yeah, so what I was saying, how he passed me the baton and how racism pops its head up is, so in sports, you would have, it got to be where, you know, it was always to fit the facade of what they wanted, of what, you know, the white coach wanted, like, or what the whites wanted. So if I, you know, I was in a predominantly white school. It was a mixture, but it was a predominantly white. So I knew, you know, I knew what it was like to be the only black or the only two blacks in the class and all that. And, you know, I say I carried myself well. So most people, even most whites were, they saw that as respectful. They respected that. They could see I didn't fit the stereotype. They were like, I had a teacher in high school thought I was an exchange student because I tucked in my pants and wore a polo. She was like, come here, I see you.
You know what, though? I had a friend, because I've been asking a lot of people questions lately. I have a friend that's an African, and he's like, I get treated better than my African-American friends do.
Right.
That's the
Yeah. And I blew me away. I had no idea.
Yep.
He's like, no, I do, because I have a different accent, and people can tell I'm not from this country, so
Yep.
they don't associate certain things.
Yeah, they remove the stereotype. And so I played sports. I was an athlete as well. And so it was always cater to the coach's favoritism. He would put it, and the whole team would know. There would be, you know, black kids on the team. The coach, of course, had to pick some because he wanted it to be diverse. They wanted some diversity. And so, but there was always, you know, the white player who wasn't as good as the black player, who wasn't even as skillful, but he worked hard. But because he had the work ethic, he got playing time. Or the coach would rearrange the team in such a way where he was the one who had the green light. He could cross the court. He could as soon as he crossed the court, he had the green light to shoot. But if we took a shot, was that a good shot? What? But we had to hit it. We had to make it. You know, even if we made it, he, you know, you know, and like it was a system. It was, and everybody knew.
Interesting.
There was a system, and you had to fit within the system. There were players who wouldn't try out because they knew, no, I'm not playing for him.
Interesting.
No, I'm not. I don't want to play because I already know how it is.
We had
It's
that
that
same
fake.
experience.
Is that typical for all your sporting
Everything.
experiences?
You can say basketball, football.
So it's not one coach. It's a very, because I'll tell you, the one kid that I was telling you about, he's a bit of a ball hog, and I'm like, no, you're learning to pass. We play the defense some, so I learned to pass, but at the same time, yeah, and there's no
And it really
raise
wasn't
there, but
and
it was.
A lot of times they would try to,
What's the issue?
they would try to say, well, you know, oh, he doesn't fit the team model, or
Okay.
you know, he doesn't play our style. He doesn't. You do too much showboating.
Okay.
And it's like, it was always that we do too much.
That's different. Yep.
And then, but everybody on the team knew that this player is not as skillful. It's it's the truth. And so, and it was because, like you said, their parents were boosters. Their parents were such and such in the community.
Right.
Their parents would show up to practice and be talking to the coach, and you know.
So those are some subtle racism that you see. What are the other subtle racism that I might not be aware of?
Well, you know, I think what we're starting to touch on now in the conversation, we're starting to move into the subject of systemic racism.
Yes, we are.
You know, and I think most, you know, African Americans, especially African American males, you know, there are multiple microaggressions of racism that we experience through any day. Okay? I'm a 42-year-old, all right, middle-aged African American male, and I share this story with Pastor Brett that this was just maybe about a month ago. Okay? we relocated to the northern Kentucky, working on that church plant, right? So there's a Kroger in our neighborhood, okay? And they have a self-checkout. No employees in sight. And if I was to look at an individual, I don't want to use the term judge.
You're good.
But
use the term.
The word judge is just simply making a measurement, right? We make an assessment.
Yeah.
Okay? Most pastors who have pastored people or done outreach or a recovery ministry, there are certain signs and characteristics you see with people who have addictive tendencies, and specifically people who are addicted to meth, the meth mouth, right? So there's this Caucasian couple. They're at the self-checkout, a man and woman, disheveled, tattoos everywhere, meth mouth. They're looking shifty over there in the self-checkout. I probably came in, I'm probably grabbing some coffee or something. In the self-checkout, pretty much dressed like I'm always dressed. At the self-checkout, all of a sudden, employee comes out of nowhere, Caucasian male, tall, stands right by me and watch me scan my coffee. And you get this couple who is Caucasian, right? That if I was to make a judgment, that I would say, okay, most likely, if there's going to be any shadiness going on, it might be from that couple, right? And those are those mini microaggressions that we learn to live with.
Yeah.
Right? You pick it up. You walk into a grocery store, a retail store, person's following you. You pick it up. You recognize it's like, okay, I'm not, either I could say something, become aggressive, and then it blows up and it turns into something it shouldn't turn into, or we accept it like it's part of it. And this is how I describe it, Stu. Yeah. Okay, take a deer. For thousands of years, deers have been prey, right? They've been, prey. They're the ones that get hunted. The ones that get
eaten, yeah.
Right? But they develop this keen awareness of their surrounding. Their hearing is hypersensitive. Their smell is hypersensitive. Even while they're eating, they're always aware of their surroundings. That's why hunters have to hunt downwind, because if it picks it up, it's bam. So it develops the survival instinct. African American people we walk in a place and we're aware of how the energy can change, the atmosphere can change. People tense up, or there's people watching you. Right. You pick all these things up, and you got to learn to just, it's part of it. This is our experience. I came in here to do this. I came in here to get this. And sometimes you're trying to de-escalate eye contact. You don't get eye contact. You're trying to smile. No smiles back. You wave. Because I'm trying to let you know that I'm not a threat. Okay, I'm not about to blow up the spot. There's nothing like that. Here I am. Just coming in here, I want to enjoy coffee, or I need a shirt I want to buy, or I need to pick up some apples. Those are the microaggressions. So when we get things like George Floyd, right, and we get things like Ahmaud Arbery, we get things like Trayvon Martin, we get things like Sandra Bland. These situations, and people are like, why are they acting like this? Because you're seeing the extreme. But we've experienced the pebbles that make the mountain. Yeah. Because many microaggressions on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. And so when we try to say, no, racism is alive, there is a such thing as systemic racism. There is a such thing as housing discrimination because of the color of our skin, redlining because of the color of our skin. People of color are more surveilled by government more than anyone else. And so the wealth gap. Okay, when you look at you study history and you look at the industrial age, where that blew up in Europe and America. All right, white America were able to build right then and there generational wealth. But people of color, African Americans, because we're African Americans, let's talk about this specifically, could not participate in that. So now we've got this wealth disparity, and it's not that we're lazy. It's not that we don't want to work. we're not included in that system to be able to do that. Yeah, there's a few, but we got to work hard.
Jump through hoops
And so, you know, you get
you
all
go to Newburgh and then you just get
and to go, but not to cut you off, but
no, go ahead.
That reminded me, even going to Newburgh, mind you, my dad was in his early 40s. So, I mean, people were really, who is this guy? He has to be a drug dealer.
Right.
Coming up here,
Really?
people riding past our house, seriously, trying to figure out who my dad was. There's no way that he can be living up here, honestly. He has to be a drug dealer. He has to be, when they find out he's a pastor.
I was going to say, your dad's a pastor,
Right.
correct? Let's just get that on camera.
Yeah.
Right, he's a pastor, but they're trying to figure out how is this family moving up here, and people started moving, literally putting their houses up for sale.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
it's crazy though. And
Oh, my
like,
word.
you know, and my dad would say, you know, they're worried about us, you know, keeping our grass cut. My dad's always, you know, my dad. You know, he loves he's everything
He
neat
loves
guy.
his grass.
He has to have, you know, but
Landscaping,
that's something they put on us. They don't cut their grass. They hate to work. You know what I mean?
It's all these
just,
stereotypes.
they're going to come in here and tear up the neighborhood. That's just the stuff that
Property
we
value is going to go
sort of
down.
got desensitized to. At Starbucks, not going to name which one. At Starbucks one time,
I
sitting
never
there-
see you at Starbucks. I don't know.
At Starbucks one
Every
time.
time I go, he's there.
I'm sitting there, right? I'm there first. Couple Caucasian guys walk in, sit in the table ahead of me. They begin to talk. One's facing me, one's back towards me. He keeps reaching for his wallet and turning around like this. I mean, he does it during their whole he couldn't have peace in their conversation, touching his wallet.
You might come
Looking
along and
back, I'm
steal
like,
it, huh?
man, I'm not here to grab your wallet. You think I'm
So those things are still going
Yes.
on regularly today.
Like he said, sometimes we kind of desensitized to it. We can either make a scene out of it. I could have said, man, I don't want your wallet. Then everybody's looking at me crazy. Like then police is called, you know, I'm arrested. So you're just like, man, I wish this is crazy.
It's the microaggressions.
This is helpful. I hate this.
It is.
That is ridiculous.
And a lot of times people will say, man, what do they want? They're just making up this stuff. And you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm like, you don't know what we have to deal with on a daily basis. Sitting here, I'm very observant. Just here, right here and now. There was this older white lady walking past. And I wonder why she stopped.
She might be stopping to read that sign. I don't know,
She
but
stopped.
and
She stopped. It was kind of, but then a black man came. She let him pass just now. Let him pass. Then she kept walking. I mean, I can understand feeling uncomfortable, but I was wondering what she was doing. I was like, Then he came walking past. So she let him go past.
Interesting.
Then she kept going. This just happened. I'm very observant. And I'm like, wow, while we're talking about this, I'm sitting there witnessing, you know, I mean, she has a right, he could have been, but it was just ironic.
But your senses, like you're talking about, have been see, that's fascinating to me. I think that deer analogy is very sad but hopeful.
Yeah, that was a good analogy.
Can I just say,
Yeah, that's perfect.
But I appreciate you even taking the time to ask questions, to listen. You know, it means a lot because you don't do that. It maybe took us to get to this point for this to happen, and I know God is involved in this. I have no doubt. You know.
yeah,
And I'm not the type of I don't do a whole bunch of, starting stuff. You know what I mean? I don't do that. I'm just like,